Sometimes the deepest cut isn't when he leaves, it's when he chooses someone else. It feels like rejection on a level that hits your pride, your confidence, your sense of worth. You wonder, what did she have that I didn't? Why wasn't I enough? But here's the truth. His choice has nothing to do with your value and everything to do with his limitations. He might have picked her, but what he doesn't realize yet is that the very act of losing you will become the decision that haunts him. Not because you'll go out of your way to prove it, but because life has a way of making people regret what they didn't cherish. And when you rise, when you glow, when you live without looking back, that's when the silence of your absence will echo louder than any words you could have said. He picked her, but in time, you'll be the one he wishes he never let slip away. When he chose her over you, it may have felt like the ultimate rejection, like a verdict on your worth. That sting runs deep because it feels personal, as though his decision somehow defined your value. But the truth is, it never did. His choice wasn't about you being less, it was about him being limited. People only ever choose from the lens of what they can see, what they understand, and what they're ready for. Sometimes they pick comfort over depth. Sometimes they choose familiarity over challenge. Sometimes they go for something that looks easier rather than someone who actually pushes them to grow. And when that happens, it's not a reflection of your deficiency. It's a mirror of their limitations. Think about it. How many times in your life have you overlooked something extraordinary because you weren't in the right frame of mind to appreciate it? Maybe you didn't recognize a good opportunity until it was gone. Maybe you didn't value a person until you matured enough to see their worth. That's exactly what's happening here. He didn't choose her because you weren't good enough. He chose her because his perception, his readiness, or his courage wasn't strong enough to choose you. And the tragedy for him is that eventually he'll see what he passed up. When someone doesn't pick you, the knee-jerk reaction is to compare yourself to the person they did choose. You start scanning for flaws in yourself or measuring yourself against her, as if the whole thing were a contest. But it's not a contest, and you were never in competition. You don't win by being picked. You win by being yourself, fully, unapologetically, without shrinking down to fit someone else's comfort level. The right person will see that, the wrong person won't, and his inability to see your worth doesn't make you any less worthy, it just makes him unqualified to stand beside you. It's important to remember that people often choose from fear, not from love. He may have picked her because she felt safe in ways you didn't, because she didn't demand growth, because she didn't trigger the kind of intensity that requires real vulnerability. Some men run from that because it's easier to settle into comfort than to rise to the level of challenge that true connection requires. That's not your burden to carry, that's his ceiling, not your floor. And here's the beautiful part. Your worth doesn't decrease just because one person failed to see it. You don't become less extraordinary because someone didn't recognize your brilliance. If a person doesn't appreciate art, the painting doesn't lose its beauty. If someone doesn't value gold, the gold doesn't lose its worth. It simply means they weren't capable of recognizing what was in front of them. That's all this is, not a measure of who you are, but of what he was unable to grasp. So instead of asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" start asking, "Why did I think he was the one qualified to decide my value?" Because the truth is, he isn't. His choice only reveals his own limitations, his own fears, his own blind spots. And in the long run, those blind spots will become his regret. He'll see you thriving, glowing, building a life without him, and he'll realize he didn't just pick her, he lost you. And that will sting in ways far deeper than your pain ever did, because losing someone extraordinary isn't something you recover from easily, and he'll carry that weight long after you've moved on. So remind yourself every day, his choice doesn't define you, it defines him. And the real story isn't about who he picked. It's about who you'll become now, that you're free to rise beyond the limits he could never meet. You don't need to compete, you need to elevate. That single shift in mindset can change everything about how you handle rejection and how you move forward. When he picked her, your first instinct may have been to compare yourself, to wonder what she had that you didn't, to measure your worth against hers. That's natural because our ego wants answers, but the truth is, comparison is a trap. The moment you step into competition with her, you've already lost, not because you aren't enough, but because you've allowed the narrative to become about him and his choice instead of about you and your growth. Competing keeps you locked in his orbit. You start dressing to outshine her, posting to get his attention, or silently hoping he sees your success and regrets his decision. But when you do that, you're still revolving around him. Your energy is still being spent trying to prove something to someone who already showed you he couldn't recognize your worth. Elevation, on the other hand, is completely different. Elevation is about rising so high in your own lane that the competition disappears. It's no longer about her versus you or who he picked. It's about becoming the most powerful, fulfilled, radiant version of yourself for you. Think about it. When you elevate, you shift the focus. You stop asking, "How do I make him see me?" and start asking, "How do I see myself more clearly?" You stop pouring energy into beating someone else and start pouring it into building yourself. And here's the irony: the moment you truly focus on elevating your life, that's when people who overlooked you begin to notice. Because nothing captures attention more than someone who is thriving, not in spite of rejection, but because of it. Elevation looks like investing in your passions, chasing your goals, nurturing your body and mind, surrounding yourself with people who celebrate you, and building a life that excites you. It's choosing to glow on your own terms instead of waiting for someone else to hand you validation. It's saying, "I'm not here to prove him wrong, I'm here to prove myself right." That shift is magnetic. Because while competition is desperate energy, elevation is attractive energy. Competition screams, "Pick me." Elevation whispers, "I don't need to be picked, I choose myself." And here's the part that hits him hardest: when you elevate, you become untouchable. The woman who competes can still be compared, measured, and diminished. The woman who elevates can't. She stands in her own lane, and her light is so strong that no one else's shadow matters. He may have picked her, but as you rise, he'll feel the weight of what he lost. Not because you tried to rub it in his face, but because it's impossible not to notice someone who has transformed into their fullest self. That's not revenge, that's reality. There's also a deeper truth here. Competing for a man's choice robs you of your dignity, while elevating restores it. When you compete, you're essentially saying, "His validation is the prize," but when you elevate, you say, "I am the prize." That's the mindset shift that frees you. Because you never want to win by being chosen over someone else. You want to win by living a life that makes you so fulfilled that his choice becomes irrelevant. So the next time your mind drifts toward comparison, remind yourself, she's not your competition. The only competition is the version of you that played small, that questioned her worth, that waited for his approval. Elevate beyond her, beyond him, beyond the entire situation. And when you do, you'll see the truth. You were never meant to compete for a man who couldn't see your value. You were meant to rise so high that his choice no longer matters, and in doing so, you become the biggest regret he'll ever carry. Silence is louder than chasing, and it's one of the most underestimated forms of power you can hold after someone chooses another person over you. When he picked her, the natural urge is to respond, to explain, to fight for clarity, or to show him what he's missing. You want him to know he made the wrong choice. You want to remind him of the connection you shared. You want to prove that you were the one who truly mattered. But every word you say, every action you take to get his attention, only feeds his ego. It reassures him that no matter what decision he made, you're still there orbiting his world. Silence, on the other hand, removes that comfort completely. It leaves a void he can't fill, and that void speaks louder than any message you could ever send. When you stop chasing, you change the dynamic instantly. Chasing is energy that says, "You matter more than me." Silence says, "I matter more than you." Chasing shows that you're still invested, still waiting, still hoping. Silence shows that you've redirected that energy back into yourself. And the moment he no longer feels your presence, your absence becomes undeniable. That absence starts to echo in ways he never expected, because people only realize the weight of what they had when it's no longer there to comfort them. Silence doesn't mean you're pretending not to care while secretly checking up on him every day. It means you've truly chosen to disengage. No texts, no calls, no lurking on his social media. You create space so vast that he has no access to you, no updates, no reassurance that you're still emotionally tied to him. At first, that silence may feel uncomfortable, even for you, because you've been conditioned to believe that love and connection require effort, words, and presence. But silence is effort in another form. It's the effort of discipline, of choosing not to pour into someone who no longer deserves your energy. And here's the thing, silence unsettles people. They expect anger, they expect drama, they even expect tears, because those reactions still revolve around them. But when they're met with nothing, with stillness, with complete detachment, it forces them to confront a truth they weren't ready for, that their decision actually cost them something real. Silence isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing games or trying to make him wonder. It's about creating a boundary that protects you from giving more to someone who already showed you they couldn't value it. It's about stepping out of his world entirely and refusing to feed his need for reassurance. Over time, silence becomes more powerful than any attempt to prove yourself. Because silence is sustainable. You can't maintain endless conversations trying to get him to see your worth, but you can maintain your peace. And that peace becomes the thing he notices most. While he's distracted with his new choice, there will be moments when he'll expect to hear from you. A birthday, a random memory, a place you used to share. And when he doesn't, when there's only silence, it will hit harder than any carefully crafted words ever could. Silence also gives you your dignity back. Instead of lowering yourself to chase someone who walked away, you rise by showing you can walk too, and not just walk, but walk with grace. Your silence communicates self-respect. It communicates strength. It communicates that you're not interested in being second choice, nor are you interested in trying to remind him of what he should have seen in the first place. That message doesn't need to be spoken, because your absence says it all. In the end, silence is the cleanest revenge, the deepest lesson, and the strongest closure. He may have picked her, but when he's left with nothing from you, no messages, no updates, no presence, he'll realize that silence has a weight far heavier than noise. And that weight will become the regret he carries, long after you've moved on to a life where his choice no longer matters. Nothing stings a man's ego more than watching someone he underestimated grow into everything he didn't support. That's why your growth is the regret he never escapes. When he picked her, he probably assumed you'd stay stuck in place, lingering in the pain, waiting for him to come back around. He thought his absence would break you, that his choice would define you. But what he doesn't realize is that you were never waiting for his validation to begin with. His decision might have hurt, but it also gave you the chance to redirect all the energy you once poured into him back into yourself. And when that energy turns into growth, into a version of you he no longer has access to, that becomes the regret that will shadow him long after the initial thrill of his choice fades. Growth has a way of humbling people who once dismissed you, because when you evolve, you don't just change your appearance or your routines, you change your entire energy. You become sharper, stronger, more self-aware. You stop needing him to see your value because you start seeing it yourself every day in every choice you make. And that self-recognition makes you radiant in ways no validation from him ever could. He may have picked her, but when he sees you living a bigger life, reaching goals you once only talked about, thriving without his presence, he'll realize he didn't just lose a woman, he lost a force. The reason growth becomes his regret is because it highlights his stagnation. While you're moving forward, learning, healing, and creating a life filled with meaning, he's stuck with the same patterns that led him to make that choice in the first place. Maybe the relationship he picked feels comfortable for now, but comfort without growth eventually becomes confinement. And when he looks at you not directly, maybe from a distance, maybe through whispers he hears about your life, he'll see that you didn't just recover, you reinvented. That contrast will eat at him, because nothing is more painful than realizing you gave up someone who outgrew the version of themselves you thought was all there was. Your growth isn't about making him jealous or proving anything to him. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about waking up and saying, I won't let this be the story of my life. I won't let this rejection define me. Growth is about deciding that his choice was a catalyst, not a conclusion. And when you embrace that mindset, your pain turns into purpose. You begin to see that the rejection was actually redirection, away from someone who couldn't handle your potential, and toward a life where your potential gets to flourish without restraint. And let's be honest, nothing makes someone regret their decisions more than realizing they no longer have access to you. When you grow, you don't just shine brighter, you raise your standards. You stop entertaining the idea of going back. You stop needing closure from him. You stop allowing his opinion to have any influence over your direction. And that's what makes regret burn the longest, knowing that even if he wanted another chance, the woman you've become wouldn't settle for offering it. He can't go back to the old you because she doesn't exist anymore. He let her go, and in her place, someone stronger was born. This is why growth is the regret he never escapes. Because long after the excitement of his choice fades, long after the reality of who he picked settles in, he'll be forced to remember that somewhere out there is a woman who took the pain of his rejection and used it to build a life far beyond his reach, and every glimpse of your strength, every reminder of your success, will be the echo of what he lost. He picked her, but your growth will always be the shadow he can't outrun. His happiness with her doesn't cancel yours, and that's one of the most important truths you can embrace when someone chooses someone else over you. It's easy to slip into the mindset that because he picked her, she somehow won, and you somehow lost. You start to imagine their life together, painting it in your head as perfect, as if their happiness comes at the expense of yours. But that's a false narrative. Life isn't a competition, and love certainly isn't a game where one person's joy subtracts from another's. His decision to be with her doesn't take away your chance at happiness. In fact, it may have cleared the path for you to find the kind of happiness that's truly meant for you. When you tell yourself that he's happy with her, you might feel this heavy knot of jealousy, like you've been replaced or discarded. But pause for a moment and ask, does their relationship actually define the potential of your life? Of course not. What they have together is about them, not about you. And here's the truth. Even if it looks perfect from the outside, you don't really know what goes on behind closed doors. Social media smiles and carefully curated moments don't equal real fulfillment. But even if they are happy, that happiness doesn't mean your story is over. It just means your chapter with him closed, so you can write a new one without compromise. The danger comes when you use his happiness as a measuring stick for your worth. That mindset traps you in comparison, making you feel like you're behind, like you've failed. But happiness is not a limited resource. It's not as if he used it all up by choosing her, leaving none left for you. Happiness is abundant, and it's not tied to him or his choices. Your joy is found in your own growth, your passions, your friendships, and eventually in the love of someone who chooses you fully and without hesitation. Think of it this way: just because someone else found their sun, rise doesn't mean your sun, rise isn't coming. It doesn't mean your sky won't light up just as beautifully, if not more so. His journey is his, yours is yours. And sometimes, the very fact that he walked away is the reason you get to discover a joy you wouldn't have found if you stayed tied to him. If he had stayed, maybe you would have shrunk yourself to keep him happy. Maybe you would have compromised in ways you didn't even realize. So his happiness with her may actually be the gift that freed you to pursue a deeper, truer happiness of your own. Another important truth is that happiness built on someone else's pain rarely lasts. If he needed to leave you to find her, it speaks more to his character than to your value. That foundation will always carry cracks. And while you might torture yourself imagining how blissful they are, remember this: relationships aren't about who looks the happiest in the beginning, they're about who can build real depth and lasting connection over time. And if he couldn't build that with you, chances are he won't magically learn how to with her. That's not your burden to worry about anymore. Instead of focusing on his life, focus on yours. Pour your energy into the things that excite you. Chase experiences that remind you of who you are. Spend time with people who lift you up. Happiness isn't waiting for the right person. It's waiting for you to claim it right now. And the irony is, the happier you become on your own, the less his supposed happiness even matters. You'll stop checking, stop comparing, stop caring, because your life will be so full that theirs will feel like a distant story you once knew, not a competition you're still part of. So let him have his version of happiness. Let them smile, let them post, let them pretend or even truly be content. It doesn't affect the joy you're destined to create for yourself. His happiness with her doesn't cancel yours. If anything, it proves there's room for everyone to find their own path. And your path, free from him, might just lead to a kind of happiness that makes his choice the regret he never escapes. The biggest regret isn't losing someone, it's losing access forever. When he picked her, he might have thought that you'd always be there in some way, even if it was in the background. Maybe he assumed you'd check in from time to time, that you'd still answer his calls if he reached out, that you'd keep the door cracked open just enough for him to step back in if things didn't work out with her. That's what a lot of people rely on when they make choices they're not fully confident about, the safety net of knowing the other person still cares. But when you choose to walk away completely, when you decide there will be no return, no back and forth, no lingering presence, that's when the weight of regret begins to crush him. Because regret doesn't come from realizing you lost something temporarily. Regret comes from knowing it's gone forever. When you close the door for good, you create a boundary that cannot be crossed. It's not about anger or revenge. It's about self-respect. You're not leaving the light on for him to stumble back into your life when it suits him. You're not waiting for him to realize his mistake. You're making it clear that once he chose her, he gave up the privilege of choosing you ever again. And that clarity is what makes the regret so deep, because it removes the possibility of comfort. He can't soothe himself with the thought that you'll always be there. That thought becomes replaced with the truth. He lost you, and there's no undoing it. People often underestimate the permanence of their decisions until it's too late. In the moment, choosing her might have felt easy or exciting, but choices have consequences, and the harshest consequence of all is losing access to someone who truly cared. At first, he might not feel it. He might be caught up in his new reality, distracted by the thrill of something different. But eventually, life will test that decision, the shine will wear off, the reality will set in. And in those moments, when he looks back for the safety net he thought would still be there, your absence will be deafening. That's when regret becomes permanent, not just because you were great, but because he knows he can never experience that greatness again. Losing access forever also shifts the power dynamic completely. As long as someone thinks they can return, they hold on to control. They might believe they still have a piece of your heart, that they can pull you back when it suits them. But when you take that possibility away, you take back your power. You send the message that you are not an option on a shelf waiting to be picked up again. You are a one-time opportunity, and once it's gone, it's gone. That message creates a finality that lingers in a person's mind. And over time, it's that finality that eats at them, because humans regret what they cannot change far more than they regret mistakes they can still fix. And here's the most powerful part: when you cut off access forever, you don't just protect yourself from future hurt, you also free yourself completely. There's no waiting for his text, no wondering if he'll come back, no bargaining with yourself about what you'd do if he did. The story is over, and that closure allows you to build something new without being tied to the past. That's where your true peace comes from, knowing you're not someone's fallback plan, but someone's once in a lifetime, and if they couldn't see it, that's their loss to carry. So yes, he may have picked her, but the choice he'll regret most isn't just losing you in the moment, it's realizing that he lost the privilege of ever coming back. And while he sits with that regret, you'll be moving forward, building a life so rich that his absence doesn't leave a dent. Because the deepest regret isn't about who he picked. It's about knowing he no longer has the right to pick you again. And so, when he chose her, it might have felt like your heart shattered, like the universe somehow decided you weren't enough. But in truth, what he really did was gift you freedom. He gave you the chance to step out of a story that wasn't written for you, to reclaim your power, and to rise into the kind of woman who will never again beg for space in someone's life. His choice does not diminish your worth, it only reveals his blindness. And here's the beautiful twist: while he may spend years wondering what if, replaying the moments he let you go, you'll be living proof that the greatest revenge is not pain, not bitterness, but growth. He picked her, but his biggest regret will always be you, not because you chased him, but because you had the strength to walk away, erase his access forever, and build a life so radiant that he'll never be able to forget the light he once had, but was too foolish to hold on to.